little countdown?
It's doing it now. It's
There we
actually
go.
live now.
Alrighty.
You want to? Well, we'll wait for some people to log on because there's nobody watching right now. Why don't we pull up the video and see, make sure it's getting to the internet and everything.
Alrighty. There we are.
Are we showing up?
Let's see.
Technology.
Just on the
friends.
Pages app. Let's see. You showing up on yours?
Yeah. We're the only ones watching us.
Is it showing a video or
It's showing the video. We're moving.
we're moving?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. All right. There are 2 people watching, but it's both of you guys.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Lyon. I'm with Heliopolis, and I'm here today with some friends of mine with the team Reform Shreveport. So Reform Shreveport, Tim Wright and Levette Fuller. I also help with Reform Shreveport, so it's all the same stuff. But so why don't you guys give a little introduction to what Reform Shreveport is, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like Chris said, my name is Tim Wright. Kind of started Reform Shreveport about a year ago, and Chris and Levette and another one of our friends, Luke Lee, we all came together and we had some similar passions about Shreveport and wanted to make it better. And we also kind of came together around some questions like why are we in some of the situations that we are? Why are we so far behind on infrastructure funding? But we also came together on some positive questions like what makes our city the city that it is? What can we improve upon? How can we continue to make it better regarding our built environment? And so we kind of came together around that, and we're interested in bringing a few speakers in, and so civil engineer, and so that's kind of where my interest in a lot of these issues stems from, and so I'm really excited to be involved in this way, and yeah, that's about it for me.
What about you, Levette?
Just about reform in general.
Yeah. So what is it that you take from Reform as an organization, and how do you see its function in the city?
Well, I see it as an opportunity to get more people involved in discussions about planning. A lot of the planning discussion happens kind of over our heads. It's a lot of policy discussion that people don't really want to think about, that it's really dry, that people might not understand because it seems kind of boring on paper. But when you realize how you're affecting like the world around you, the structures around you through those policies, it gets more interesting. And the more people understand it, the more they can be a part of that dialogue, be a part of helping our community grow in smarter ways. But mostly, the more you know, the more you can engage with leaders that make those decisions so they can make better decisions on your behalf.
Yeah, I would echo both of the things that you guys said. I mean, it's Reform is an opportunity. Is providing opportunities through the speaker series, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then on the ground, like real efforts that people can get out into the community and actually affect some change in their local neighborhood. That there's a project that we're working on now, which we'll talk a little bit about, and there are certainly things that we want to do in the future. But really, it all comes down to, like Levette said, making sure that people have the information and the access to the information so that they can speak to their leaders about issues intelligently, and then hopefully, as more people become informed about those issues, they can make smart decisions about what their leaders should be doing or who their leaders should be in the first place. So let's talk a little bit about what Reform has done up to this point. There's been a speaker and there's been some work projects. Why don't you start with Chuck's event that we did back in October?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. So last October, we brought in a speaker and lecturer. His name was.
By the way, shameless plug for Abby Singer's Bistro helping us out there. We're on the balcony at 617 Texas Street in downtown Shreveport, and they've graciously given us this corner of the balcony to have this discussion tonight. So we may have to just speak up over there's buses and things, city transportation.
So anyways, last October we brought in a speaker And Chuck Marone and him and his organization, Strong Towns, have really done a lot of great work about challenging kind of the way we think about cities, and they just have a lot of good strategies to increase community involvement in particular issues. For example, if any of y'all have heard about the new bike lanes in Highland this weekend, I had the opportunity to write an article about those bike lanes in onto the Strong Towns blog. And one of the things that really all of us learned from that is just, it's not necessarily about, oh, we have this or we have that, but it's about our approach. And during the public process, which I get really excited about, for those of you who are fans of Parks and Rec and Leslie know, we all get excited about the way that citizens like us can get involved in the public process and make change. And so I had the opportunity to write about that, and it just starts with us being educated about the issues and knowing how to approach leaders and knowing how to be involved and be educated. And our speakers last October really gave us a great start in doing that. And that's so we had that in October. Do you have anything to add?
I think a great takeaway from Chuck's visit was that a lot of people were interested and were ready to get involved and ready to engage and have those conversations. So it wasn't just us like taking this chance on raising money and bringing somebody in and then no one shows up. We had really great turnout for the speaking, for the keynote, and then for the bus tours the next day. And I think that getting out on your feet and actually like looking at parts of our city where we're doing things the right way versus parts where we could really improve what we're doing, and understanding everything that goes into that was really cool.
Absolutely. So and one of the takeaways that I got from the Strong Towns event was Chuck kept saying this phrase, the next smallest thing. And the next smallest thing was really about looking at your community, looking at a neighborhood and saying, what's something small that can be done fairly easily, fairly quickly, that will improve the quality of life in a given area. And so, we took that to heart when kind of picking what that next project would be. We had put our focus on during the Strong Towns event, and we moved to the one of the next easy targets, which is Highland, which has really seen a lot of redevelopment in the last 15 years. Has an incredibly diverse neighborhood of income and race and all sorts of different things, and so we found Highland Park, which is just south of downtown. A few blocks further north in Columbia, which people use, and kind of on the other end of that area of town from Betty, Virginia, that had kind of been neglected. There had been some money that had been put together by the city but hadn't been spent on how to, because they just weren't sure what to do with the park and what it is that needed to be done. So we organized a cleanup event, and it was just supposed to be picking up trash, making note of some things that might need to be fixed or approached in the future. And John Paul Young, who is an urban farmer, is that a good way to describe it, and restaurateur, he runs the levee over on Kings Highway, came out, just happened to come out and join the crowd because he's from the neighborhood, and he brought this whole new approach to what we were doing that day, which was to look at how the park is so incredibly hilly, and it's constructed, and the man-made structures are made in such a way that it's causing erosion and deterioration of that park, where literally the ground is washing away every time it rains down into a drain that's at the bottom of the park and going out to the Red River. And the park, he recognized that the park could never be what we wanted it to be and what the community deserves it to be, unless there was some action taken on abating the erosion so that plants could grow and that the soil could be rebuilt and things like that. So that was the next step, which was in December.
We started in December.
Yeah, and since then we've had three work
three
days
so far.
And we've had some really great community partners come out And again, it's like Tim said about the bike lanes. It's about the process. It's about understanding how to not just to do something simple like a cleanup, which is great, but what are the long-term implications of that project, and how can the city and organizations like SPAR learn from people who have knowledge in the community, like John Paul, and really make effective changes that are organic and natural, not just in kind of the green environment sense, but also in the sense of how things are put together by citizens,
Right.
and how people take ownership of a space so that it's more maintained naturally, without having to see so much kind of barreling through with a bulldozer or extra dirt or whatever it is that might take place otherwise. So it really has been a fantastic project, and we've got some really great community partners that have been helping. Shreveport Green is on. SPAR has been a great help. The city too. Jeff Everson and Matthew Lynn, the city representatives for the city and the parish respectively, have been a really great support, and local business Figlio Tree Service, is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, so it's just been about this process of involving the right people and making sure that there's a process that's taking place, and it's not just kind of willy-nilly, so that the park has a long-term plan in place, or has kind of norms that get sucked up. And so whether it's bike lanes or a park or the way we build buildings or what have you, it's all about establishing that process and getting people involved, which is
Right.
how reform has been effective over the last however. And to that end, we've got another event that's coming up Thursday. And what maybe can be learned by that. And feel free, guys, to be kind of jotting down your questions, and we're going to take a look at the feed in a minute and kind of address some of those as we go. It can be about anything related to reform or development. But Tim, why don't you tell us about what's going on Thursday?
Yeah, so this Thursday we have a speaker. His name is Joe Minicozy. He's has an architecture degree. He also has an urban planning degree
From Harvard.
From Harvard, yes. So
Harvard
smart
educated.
guy, very smart guy.
Yeah.
And so he's done a lot of work. He's from Asheville, North Carolina, and he has this firm called Urban 3. And what they really do is they provide visuals to help us understand which parts of our city are financially productive and which aren't.
From a tax perspective,
Yeah,
specifically.
from a tax perspective. And that's one of our goals is reform. You'll hear us talk about money and finances a lot because it's incredibly important, and that's part of the reason why we're really interested in what Joe has to say. If you saw on the Heliopolis page today, we posted a photo from one of Joe Minicozy's studies that he's done of Lafayette, Louisiana, actually. And they give detailed images of which areas of our city are giving us a positive return on our investment and which ones are not. Every time there's a project done, taxpayer money has to be spent, and there's no way around that. But there is a way to find out, okay, is this money we're spending wisely, or is this money we're not spending wisely? And so he's really done a lot of detailed analyses on cities across the country to determine how you figure that out. And so that's really what this weekend will be all about. We'll have a lunch presentation at the Chamber of Commerce at noon on Thursday, and we'll also have some boxed lunches. You'll have to order those today if you want a boxed lunch for that. You come a little bit early to the Chamber of Commerce if you like to eat lunch beforehand. And then we also have our evening keynote at 6 p.m. at Central Art Station, and we'll have some snacks there as well. And so that's kind of what you can expect from this weekend. We're really excited to have Joe in from North Carolina.
So lunches are from Sassy Cafe on Texas Street. Thank you, Monique, for agreeing to do that with us.
We can practically see her from here.
Which is awesome. Support downtown business. And that's all I had to add for right now. Oh, I'm sure I'll think of something else.
Yeah, well, and this is, we had somebody post on our Facebook page, on the Heliopolis Facebook page, about when we were promoting the event, because Heliopolis is a partner with Reform. and somebody said, well, once we have the event, are we going to have like a get together afterwards to say, what is it that we need to do? And I'm really hoping that we are able to leave the event with some ideas in our head about what needs to happen next. But I think that overall
Hey, Luke.
What's up?
I think that overall the message should be present in the presentation. Certainly Joe's going to give his experience that he's had with other cities and how they've been able to implement these ideas. In fact, Chuck, during his presentation, made reference to Joe's. That's how we came across Joe, as Chuck was talking about him when he was here. And Jeff Everson was at the presentation, and during the Q&A, which there will be a Q&A for Joe as well after the 6 p.m. event. And Jeff was fascinated by this data-driven understanding of how property is assessed for investment, for civic investment through tax revenues. And so it's really something that our city leaders, at least some of them, are already interested in. And so for you to be there and show your support and to learn a little bit about it yourself may help this movement go forward.
So Joe went to Lafayette and did research on Lafayette and on their revenue, and the comparisons on the graphs you'll see, it's like a 3D graph. You'll have the income there, but you've got more going on per block basically, and that tax income is coming from areas that are already paid for. It's areas of town that have already they were the first parts of the town to be built, and that's where a lot of the revenue is actually still coming from, whereas the areas that are further out are kind of draining the resources and they're not really putting anything back. That's Lafayette, but that's what the graphs indicate.
And that's not an uncommon thing through many of the cities that Joe has assessed. And, it feeds into things like last year, the Shreveport Fire Department released its annual report, and they were talking about how they were having to build all these new fire stations. And, of course, they're not really building new ones in addition to what they have. They're relocating. And the reason that they mentioned was the sprawl of the city. And so we're spending, because of decisions we made years ago, we're now spending millions of dollars in tax revenue to build new fire stations simply because we've spread out so much.
Right.
And so these are small things that may not affect the immediate future. These may not be things that affect the next election cycle, but they're things that affect the next generation, and that are now costing us lots and lots of money, where we may have been able to make smarter decisions, or at least plan ahead, so that those decisions could be made more wisely. And so that's just a small example from Shreveport, from that report from the Shreveport Fire Department.
Yeah, and let me talk a little bit about the financial side of things. Like I said before, it's something you'll hear us talk about a lot. Part of the things that made the project that we had in Highland Park, and also the bike lanes that went in recently, part of the reasons that we have really drawn attention to those projects are because of the finances. With Highland Park, we improved that park significantly, and we use existing organizations to help us. We use existing businesses to donate materials, and typically, if we went to the city and we said, hey, we want to fix up this park, we need $50,000, we need $100,000, we could do something, but especially in Shreveport, where Chris mentioned that the fire department is spread out, SPAR is spread out, everything is so spread out that we need to really think very carefully about how we spend our money. And so that's part of the reason why we really like the Highland Park project, because we use existing yard waste that people don't really need, but we used it to help restore that park, and we've already seen so many results. And then with the bike lanes, if you've probably been to another city, maybe Austin, maybe Dallas, and experienced what they call protected bike lanes, and those are certainly something that, as far as alternative transportation goes, that we want to build to. But as far as taking the first step, taking the next best step, the bike lanes that were done in Shreveport are a great example. This road project, resurfacing project, was already planned And as part of that existing contract, the city was able to put down lanes in a road that it really fit, and so here you have we're getting something that many citizens in Highland have asked for regarding bike infrastructure, and we did it at a low cost. We did it without adding to the existing construction contract, and then the city has a sign shop that they made all these signs in-house, and so it really represented a really innovative way to go about improving our city. And so those are the kind of ideas that we really want to bring attention to.
Absolutely, and to tag onto that, the financial part is one of the things, but the bike lanes project, as well as Highland, but bike lanes in particular, really brought together the best of local government and citizen interaction. All the stakeholders were in the room. The city came and did a presentation at Centenary College. There were concerns that the biking community and the people that showed up had, both for the bike lanes and trying to make them the best they could, or being against them for whatever reason it is. And the city took that feedback, the constructive and the critical, and created a new plan. And when they came back with that second plan, it matched what the citizens were asking for. And as Tim said, it was basically revenue neutral. Any arguments of why are we spending money on X when we have Y problem kind of disappear in this case, because again the road was already being resurfaced as part of a project that the mayor is doing and the city council has approved, and they were just basically able to say, instead of doing this layout on the stripes and the lanes, we're going to do this one instead. It was basically no cost. As low cost as it could have possibly been, unless somebody had donated money privately. I mean, it's the best example of citizen involvement and betterment of the community at virtually no tax cost that the city has seen in a long time. So anyway, that's my tag on that, because it's fascinating. Like I don't live in Highland, but I live downtown, and so I bike to work and I bike to the store and that sort of thing, and I've gone to visit friends in Highland, and it's fantastic to have them there. It serves a couple of purposes. It serves the purpose of providing a transportation route. It also makes drivers more aware that there are an increasing number of people that are using that form of transportation, and hopefully those kind of discussions and those approaches to those challenges can be duplicated for all sorts of different things, whether it's water and sewage, or future decisions on streets and that sort of thing, or how to incentivize development, which I want to talk about. So, one of Joe's, and then we can get to some questions.
There's no questions.
No questions yet, so we'll just keep talking until you have questions. Could be a while. So one of the things that Joe talks about in his TED Talk is the use of taxes and tax incentives or disincentives to encourage certain behavior. We all know that Shreveport right now is and Caddo Parish combined. It's difficult sometimes to parse city from parish, but the area as a whole is certainly experiencing some tension with taxes, whether it be the recent Caddo Parish tax initiatives that all failed on the voting ballot because people were kind of railing against new taxes, or it was really a re-upping of taxes, but it manifested itself in a form of failure, and it showed the city and the parish that there is this pushback and that they need to be aware of that. And so what are some of the things that Joe talks about in terms of incentive, disincentive, and how we can leverage taxes to make a difference?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I think of is parking, and there's, especially downtown, it's an issue that a lot of people face as far as finding a parking spot downtown. But there's also another side to that coin, in the sense that there's a lot of decisions that the way that our tax structure kind of is set up, that it can incentivize, a person that owns a lot. Okay, it's more economically viable here to build a parking lot, or here it's more economically viable to build a building. And I'm no expert in these kind of issues, but those things are so important to think about. I believe it's Pennsylvania has a tax structure where you're basically taxed off the value of your land. So a lot of, if Louisiana had a tax structure like Pennsylvania did, say downtown, the land is so valuable because it's so dense that you would be paying, tons of taxes on a parking lot, say, but you wouldn't have any income because you wouldn't have a business or anything coming in from it. But we don't have that tax structure, so for those people that do own those lots, it makes sense for them to have a parking lot there because they don't pay as much in taxes. So that's really general, but those are kind of some of the decisions that really have a direct impact on the way that our city operates and the way that it's laid out.
Absolutely. You want to add anything?
No. That covers it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that then why happens, and if we figure out the best formula that works for our community, works for our businesses, then we can build a better system for creating environments that we want, and that all goes into things like, well, dense environments have tall buildings. I mean, you can see behind us we have buildings that are 4, 5, and as we go down towards the riverfront, 16, 18, 24 stories, 26 stories, I think, maybe our tallest building. And what you have is you're using that 1 square, acre of space, and you're building a lot of potential tax revenue in there, whether it's leasing, property taxes, sales taxes, the businesses that take place there, and the jobs that space creates. And so, say compared to, and I'm just kind of creeping into a discussion that Joe's going to have on Thursday, but you look at a Walmart that's spread over a lot of land and has maybe 75 or 100 workers, whereas downtown you might have 75 workers in one quarter of an acre or 1/2 of an acre, and all the things that go into that, whether it's roads or bridges or sidewalks and that sort of thing that lead to that property, become more, I don't know what the word, they become more valuable as a resource, because for every square foot of sidewalk or street you're putting in, you're leading to many more jobs in a dense environment as opposed to a spread out environment. And so that's why when we talk about sprawl and things like that, it's not just about distance from center, it's about how that land's being used and that sort of thing, which is why you see in some of Joe's maps, like the cores of cities, the downtowns, the neighborhoods right outside of downtown being really valuable land. I would imagine partly because of their vertical nature and how compact they are. And as you go further out, you see this red start to creep into the map. But yeah, so it's going to be really fantastic. So for those of you who are just tuning in, Thursday, that's this Thursday, June 22nd, 6 p.m. at Central Art Station. Joe Minicazzi from Urban 3 is coming in. Reform Shreveport is bringing Joe in along with our sponsors, which we'll get to in a minute. And then also earlier in the day, if you're a business person working downtown or you can make it into downtown, the Chamber of Commerce is holding a lunch at noon. You can come in and eat lunch at 11:30. And Joe will be giving a short version of the presentation that will be taking place at night then as well.
So sorry about the road noise, but that's kind of a good thing. It means people are still downtown driving. Be nicer if they were walking around and maybe, having some coffee at Rhino or coming to Abby Singer's where we are right now. But that's where we are, right at Texas Street on the balcony at Abby Singer's, and that's why there's road noise.
Yes. We're trying to... we just start to tune it out at some point because there's just some constant noise, which, as Levette said, it's great activity. So, go ahead.
So, I thought, Levette, do you want to talk a little bit about placemaking? Each part of the cool thing about Reform is like...
Sorry, I spilled my...
We didn't
I
see anything.
spilled my mixed drink all over myself just now.
So, placemaking and creative placemaking basically is the idea that you can build it and see what people will participate in. And it's temporary. Like, you take a space and you create what you'd like to see there and see how people react to it and respond to it and see if your idea is viable in that space. And that could be a pop-up shop, or it could be a pop-up dog park, or it could be in that area. So what is interesting to me is, like, Reform Shreveport, when they do events in a city, you talk to a lot of people in a community that are invested in seeing it grow and improve, and they bring their ideas, and you try something out, you see what works. And if something's sort of working, you look at what's holding back that permanent change. And it might just be a willingness to do the sweat equity, the labor to make that change. But it might be zoning. It might be that there is some law or some regulation on the books in your city that's keeping those things from being possible. Like, here, it could be, if you want sidewalk cafes, it's two things. One might be a zoning thing for being able to have tables and chairs out on the sidewalk downtown, but the other might be, well, sure, you can have the chairs and tables out the sidewalk, but you can not have alcohol out there because of another law. And deciding how much it's worth to you to make those changes and how hard you want to work with your elected officials to make those things work for you. The other thing could be just like a pop-up dog park. Like, how hard is it to have a dog park? Do you need to do?
Is that a rhetorical question?
I mean,
because, like,
I might just
Shreveport's
be throwing.
made it very hard.
I mean, I
for
could be
some reason.
throwing a little bit of shade there. It could be something that, it's like, here needs a lot of planning and a lot of money, and something, you make something that's really beautiful. But it might be that your citizens would be happy with just throwing up a fence and putting out a water hose, so they have somewhere that they can bring their dogs to be social with other dogs and people that have animals and want to have that interaction. But that would be a placemaking activity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, to go back to the street cafe concept, in the 90s, when Austin was really pushing for its downtown redevelopment. And I've been to Austin quite a few times with the intent of going there and trying to understand what it is that happened there. And of course it's a capital city, and of course they have UT Austin, they're both amazing things to have. But from what I understand, in the late 80s and early 90s, Austin really wasn't all that different downtown-wise than Shreveport was. Lots of boarded-up buildings, lots of dilapidated buildings, and no street cafes, no bike lanes, and all this kind of stuff. And the city council there was, they used tax money to incentivize downtown street-side cafes to be built. They gave cash money in support of any business that would make that happen. And after a time, it became such the norm that they were able to pull that incentive away and still have it happen. And so they created a culture that was conducive to these kind of decisions being made, and then they were able to pull the public money out of it. So it's really just an opportunity for somebody to say, for the government to say, hey, here's something that, and maybe not just the government, but the people who voted for those elected officials to be in office,
Right.
who put their confidence in those ideas and said, okay, this is what we want. How do we get it? Well, a business isn't going to just outright build new infrastructure on the sidewalk with all the permits, construction permits and stuff that might have to take place, and all the difficulties it would do, or difficulties it would take to get that done. The government cleared those obstacles away, gave them an incentive, and said, here, why don't you try this? They gave it a go, it caught on, and they were able to pull out and say, cool, this is how it is now. So, that's getting back to that whole how we use tax money to encourage certain types of behavior. But that, at least in my opinion, tax money shouldn't be used for a single purpose like that forever. If an idea is not working, we should stop and try something else.
But the issue here becomes one of, we have so many infrastructure problems, we can only afford to focus on those problems or those issues. I think it's really hard to convince people that we can multitask and that we can't just worry about, like, our water and sewage and not worry about our sidewalks And if you have a change that needs to be made anyway for other reasons, go for it if it's going to actually be a positive for the businesses along that area. So we've got some work to do, and a lot of people probably that find these ideas attractive, but are not necessarily convinced that there's an easy way to get there, or that any of this is anything other than like a new trendy jargon, which is why they should come on Thursday and hear what Joe has to say about it.
Because and that's the thing, like with Joe, like and certainly for me, like I don't think that we should spend tax money on things that don't work. And I believe in the concept of, personally, I believe in the idea of fiscal conservancy, where we're not wasting money on things that don't work, that we keep throwing money into the same things and expecting different results. But in order for things to work, you also have to have the policy and the drive, in the administration or in the council or the commission to actually see something through to fruition and not just say, well, here's some money and then walk away.
Right.
How are you providing the assistance, the data or the helping somebody with permits or creating a process so that something is easy for people, removing roadblocks, removing, whether it's a law or regulation or what have you, or at least simplifying that process so that people can do what they need to do to make sure the idea actually gets legs and it makes itself happen.
And that's where you come in. Like, one of the biggest goals of us is just getting people involved, getting everyone involved. It's so easy to sit on the sidelines and say, I want this, I want that. But all these projects that we talk about, they're not possible at all if you don't have citizens that are involved and talking to the city about what we want. They're ready to listen. So
we have a question. Alan Dyson wants to know where the funding came from for Thursday's talk. Were there any major contributors? If so, who were they?
Absolutely.
There was.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So the Downtown Development Authority was our prime sponsor for this event, and so Chris and I, we live downtown, and Yvette frequents downtown often.
I used to work downtown. I miss that.
And so that's a key focus area for us, and so that partnership kind of lent itself very well. We also have had some money donated to us by the Community Foundation of North Louisiana, and they were a sponsor for our last event as well. And we also have a few private donors too. And I'll just put in a little shameless plug. Our fiscal agent for this event is Community Renewal, and you can go to their website, Community Renewal. I think it's .org/give. And if you earmark Reform Shreveport, that money will go to help support this event and future projects as well.
Yeah, and it's worth saying, when we did the Chuck Marone event, after the event was said and done, we released a spreadsheet of the major sponsors, what the money was spent on, so that you were transparent. There are certainly some private donors, like individual people that wanted to remain anonymous, but for the most part, the large majority of the funds are you can see who gave, how much they gave, you can see what we spent at each business, how much we paid Chuck to come in, what his flight cost, meals that we spent here, print materials and things that we got together. So we're going to do the same thing for the Urban 3 Joe Minikazi event, and that's in an effort to show people that you can be transparent and that you can have partnerships, even with quasi-government organizations, nonprofits, or the city itself or the parish itself, and be transparent about those connections so that people understand where the money's coming from. And we like to think that we're pretty open and upfront about what that is, what the partnerships are that exist.
Repeat that. Alan got video interrupted. I hope he's back now, but
it shows we're still live.
Well, it interrupted for him, but he might be back now. But yeah, we've had some major donors for this. We appreciate that they had confidence in what we did last time by scraping money together every way that we could, in fact donating some of our own funds among the team. But this time we got really lucky that we got some of the funding fairly easily from people that believe in what we're trying to do, But yeah, transparency is key, and we do want to have our autonomy as Reform Shreveport. So we hope that we will be able to get support from more individuals through community renewal. So feel free to help us out.
Yeah. And, the program certainly for Thursday, it costs, between $8,000 and $12,000 to do these kinds of events, between the speaker fees, hotel, airfare, and meals and all the sorts of things that kind of go, we're very lucky that we have some in-kind sponsors as well, like Shreveport Regional Arts Council has given us their building through a partnership with the DDA, and of course Heliopolis is helping with kind of pushing the event pro bono. Graphic design and web work and all that stuff is being donated. Our partner Luke, his company, Fusiform Design Workshop, is helping with the design and the web stuff.
We're a volunteer operation. We run as lean as we can, and we think it's worth it because we think that the speakers we're bringing in and then the projects that we're doing will set a good example for how to make things better.
Yeah, and if you are interested in learning more, we can't cover everything on this video right now, but come to the event on Thursday, and we also have a website, reformshreveport.com. There you can read bios of our team. You can find our email address. Yes, we have some pretty fantastic bios. You can find out how to get in contact with us. If you'd like to contribute to our mission and what we're doing, you can get in touch with us there as well. And so we're still getting off the ground, but we want to involve as many people as we can.
And that website that's Reform. That's REFORM Shreveport.com, right?
Yep.
And then we're on Facebook too. So find us on our Facebook page. As Tim said, you can go to the website and you can find a recap of what happened with Strong Towns, a link to some of the videos. You can actually watch his presentation that we live streamed last time, so that's up there for posterity if you want to go check out what the last event was like. We have photos and information from our Highland Park project and a video update from the Highland Park project where John Paul kind of explains the restoration of that space.
We've got another question.
Okay.
Tiffany Moore is asking what areas of Shreveport that the projects will be implemented. Our first project is Highland Park, and if you've got suggestions for other areas that we should look at, we're happy to take suggestions. I think after Highland, we've talked about Caddo Heights area, possibly the Bottoms, Allendale. Either of those areas would be potential for next projects, but we're open to suggestions.
Absolutely, and we're also open to help. I mean, don't just come to the event if you're really interested in this stuff. Don't just come to the event. Don't just read the website or join the Facebook page. Let us know what you want to do. We're looking for people who have a drive to kind of take on some of their own projects that embody the kind of things that Reform is doing. We're looking at building this team and trying to find people who can take this message and this process and move it into things that they find interesting, whether it's a park cleanup or it's another development project of some kind. The three of us can't do it ourselves. The four of us can't do it ourselves. And so we need people like you, if you're interested, to step up. We can all sit back on Facebook and armchair run the city and complain about where things are, how money's being spent or whatever. Facebook doesn't count. It doesn't count. Getting out, going to a city council meeting or a Caddo Commission meeting, I know they're during the day and the Caddo Commission's working on that, but get out in the community, find an organization that you like, whether it's Shreveport Green or us or somebody else, and spend your time making that thing better, or start your own thing.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Anything else?
That's it.
Oh, wow.
No more questions.
How long have we been on the air?
Forever.
Forever. I love this stuff. So I listen to podcasts all the time that are like over an hour. So we need to have more drinks beforehand so that we can all laugh a little
or
bit
something.
Something. Thanks for tuning
Hold
in.
on, wait. There's more
Oh.
from Alan. In the mid '90s, the building you are now in was purchased by the DDA. It received a new roof, paint on the outside, new windows, and stub ends for utilities. Nothing else. In that day, the cost for that construction was $250,000.
Is it more
It's
of a
just a
comment?
statement. Yeah, it's a comment.
Yeah, I mean, and actually there's a plaque downstairs at the Robinson that kind of explains that partnership. And as I understand it, the building and then the building next door, which is, nothing's been done with it, unfortunately, were both paid for using federal grant money, which stipulates there's certain stipulations of what they can and can't do with the buildings. Like the building next door, they can't sell it. They either have to bring it up to code or, and since the Robinson Film Center is currently in a deficit, this is no secret. They've been fundraising for a long time, and since we're here, we'll go ahead and just say it. Donate to the Robinson Film Center. They're, I think $250,000 still away from breaking even, and they're just paying interest, and they would love to be able to do something else with this building next door, and they would love to do more things with the building they have already. But yeah, it was a DDA-owned building, I believe. It was used as storage for a long time,
right,
for Christmas decorations, I think. When I first, because I started actually worked at the Robinson Film Center from like 2007 to 2010. So, yeah.
Wendy Day Vance wants to know if there's specific areas we're starting with. Yes, we our first project that we're working on is the Highland Park. We talked about it a little bit earlier. We started by thinking we'd just do a cleanup in the park. That might be beneficial, but now we're actually working on the structure of the park to make it usable, to sort of mitigate some of the erosion so that it's not just like muddy and gross, but has clean paths and has trees that are like vital and maybe some grass. And maybe from there we might be able to work on the disc golf course or something. But that's where we're starting. And I think that the way we want to work on projects is figure out what's working and then replicate that. Once we know what we're doing that works well, we can continue with those parts and not reinvent a wheel.
Yeah, and we really want to find people that are really engaged in their own communities. We don't want to be people that come in and say, hey, looks like your neighborhood needs this, let's come and do this.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. We want to find people that have an idea, and that if we can assist in any way, that'd be great. If you saw something in Highland Park and you said, hey, we want to do that here, we'll be happy to help. But we just want to bring awareness to some of these efforts that are already going on in our city. The other day, the other day, I just met a guy from West Shreveport. I don't know anything about West Shreveport. I would love to learn more about what those communities need, and so we have lots to learn as well.
I guess that's a part of process, is figuring out what everyone's saying. Everyone that we know in Highland for the longest time, or around Highland, is saying, I'd like to be able to get around by bike. That's what you keep hearing on repeat, is something that would make our neighborhood more livable, is just the ability to get around safely on a bike. But for another neighborhood, it might be something else. For the Caddo Heights area, or for Lakeside, or for Queensboro, it might be some other thing that everyone is just saying on repeat about what would make their neighborhood more livable. Is there something with the park in your neighborhood? Is there a natural pathway to the library that might be a bit easier for getting around? But what is it that everyone's talking about that you want to figure out how you can fix it?
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about what we're trying to do, again, as we said earlier, which is we're trying to understand the process by which these things get done and hone that process through partnerships with the city or city organizations, so that when somebody comes to us and says, man, from one of those neighborhoods, it says, man, everybody in my community has been saying this for years.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Why is it this can't be done? And we can say, well, let us walk you through how we did it, and then empower them to do that in their community.
Exactly.
And then we can provide, whatever support, whether it's a hug or some other more tangible form of support. We'll do what we can.
Totally.
So
cool.
Anything else?
Wendy says that she and her husband just bought the yellow house on Dalzell, and they're going to restore it, and they want us to come by and see what they've got planned for it. Cool.
You should also talk to Luke Lee,
who's not here with us, but is a part of the group.
Luke and his wife, well, more his wife actually, fantastic individual, Brittany Lee, formerly Brittany Wynn, actually started the Yellow House of Highland several years ago, and they live across the street, I think. So, feel free to private message the Heliopolis Facebook page, and we can connect you with them. We'd love to see what you're doing, and I know that they still love that building, and I think they would love to know what's going on in their neighborhood too. So,
Right
let us
on.
know.
Yay. That's it. Go. They are our neighbors. Yep, they are.
Fantastic.
Correct.
Yeah, we'd love to see what's going on with that. I know Luke and I talked a lot about what that building could be, with more funds. But we're going to sign off here. We're going to go through it. We're going to mention one more time what's happening Thursday. But before we do, this has been Heliopolis. Tim Wright, Lavette Fuller, myself, Chris Lyon with Heliopolis and Reform Shreveport. And thank you for tuning in today. It's been a fantastic audience. We've had a really good number of people show up today. If you have more questions, just post them in the comment section below. We'll be watching it over the next day or so. And Tim, why don't you take us out with another synopsis of what's going to happen Sunday? Just date, time, place, what's going to happen.
Yeah, so at noon we have a presentation at the Chamber of Commerce. We'll have lunch catered. If you want lunch, we have sandwiches from Sassy's Cafe. We have to pre-order those this evening.
We'll put a link in the comment section below if you want to get a lunch.
Yeah, and so we'll have that presentation. Will be at noon, and then we'll also have an evening presentation at 6 o'clock at Central Art Station, and that's going to be great. It'll be 45 minutes of presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. And don't let any possible rain scare you away. We're going to have a great time.
Absolutely.
And
that event again is Joe Minikazi with Urban 3 coming in from Asheville, North Carolina to talk to us. Harvard-educated guy, city planner, been all over the country helping cities find out how best to spend their money and put their focus on certain types of development and where to put that development so that it best returns a benefit for the citizens of the community. So it's going to be great. Again, reformshreveport.com, REFORM Shreveport.com, also on Facebook. And this has been Heliopolis signing off.
see you later.